Well, the weather has finally cooled off a bit.
Yeah, a little bit, by like 5 degrees.
Yeah, it's down to like 92. But at least that way you can come out here, especially in the late afternoon, and run some trains. And that's a great deal of fun. There is a small problem, however, and that's there's always some maintenance issues. And in this case, the maintenance issues are these switches. I've got 3 switches out here that I bought from a friend, and he had them on his railroad for years and years and years, and I rebuilt them and then installed them here, and they weren't very good when I put them in, and now they're really not good at all.
Oh dear.
So as they're falling apart, I said, let's just call up Mike at Llagas Creek and have him build us all new switches.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
So there's Mike's switch. He delivered to us 4 wonderful switches with plastic ties, so much better than what we've got. Now all we have to do is figure out a way to tear the old switches out and put the new ones in.
Oh, that's work.
But it actually, because I was able to have Mike build them, I just gave him the exact size. It's a number 6 switch, and he built them so that they should, in theory, just drop straight in.
That would be nice.
And that's one of the big advantages of working with Mike over at Llagas Creek. You can just say, I need a switch of these, curvature, anything you want. Just tell him what you want, and he builds it at his bench.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. It looks just like Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I think we need a flagman.
A couple of barrels.
Yeah. Orange cones and barrels. Once I got the switches torn out, in theory, again, the new ones should drop right in here, and I should be able to hook them up to my existing power runs and everything. And even my little center section that connects everything together should drop in place. You can see that as I was taking the old ones out, you can see why I'm taking them out. They're falling apart.
Oh, no kidding. Is that rust?
Well, they were built on wood ties, and they're just not great. Also, I had originally put plastic insulators in here because at one time I was running the railroad on DC, and so you need a lot more rail gaps and insulators when you're running on DC as opposed to DCC. So here are the 4 switches that Mike delivered. 4 because I'm adding a switch in a different place.
Oh.
But beautiful.
They look really nice.
They're just so well put together. Now Mike will build these things just about any way you want. You can just tell him what size you want and what features, a lot of different, it's all custom built, so he can build them any which way you want. And one of the things I wanted was an isolated frog with a lead already soldered to it so that I can tie into that and separately power the rail frog here. So you can kind of see that yellow wire sticking out from underneath there. Well, let's flip it over, you can get a better look. So what he's done is drilled a hole here and put a yellow wire and soldered that in place. And I'm using yellow for color code for all of the frogs. All of the frog leads are colored yellow. The outside rail is red, the inside rail is black, and the frogs are yellow. The switches are very similar to their flex track that they sell. You can buy just the tie strips or assembled track. I've been getting assembled 6-foot lengths of track here. And the difference being that the switches are all hand spiked, where the actual track uses plastic spikes. You can see on the back side here where metal spikes have been pushed through longer plastic ties, and then the ends bent over so that they can't possibly come loose. Now, even though I'm just replacing switches that were already here, the alignment is ever so slightly different, and so I'm using a straight edge and really figuring this out so that everything is in perfect alignment and doesn't have any peculiar kinks or bends in it. Now there's a fair amount of wiring that goes on with this. This is called the stock rail, the 2 outside rails being called the stock rails. And those are simply hooked up to power. Again, I'm using a black lead for the inside rail and a red wire for the outside rail. Inside and outside being relative to if the railroad was a big circle. Now these rails are called the closure rails, and they're the rails that extend from the rail frog down to the rail points, the switch points. These are the points here, and the closure rails will get their power when the points are closed up against the stock rail.
So what's the plan if dirt gets down in there?
Yeah, you're going to lose the electrical connection.
You sure will.
So what I've always done with these situations is just connect these elements directly to power so they're not pulling their power through this gap.
I see.
Then all the dirt that needs to can get in there and it won't affect anything.
It might derail the train.
But I can clean the dirt out if that happens.
Okay.
And so to ensure that the closure rails and the points always have power, it's best to solder connections here to the closure rails and then just tie them to the same buses, the red wire and the black wire. Or you could simply run a wire from the stock rail over to the closure rail. The way I've been doing this is I've got a heavy bus running under the entire railroad, and then I'm using these crimp-on connectors so that I don't have to crawl under here and do any soldering. Moreover, when I change things around like I'm doing right now, I can just unplug things. And then the drops from the actual rail are connected to these little spade lugs, and those can be plugged into the crimped on connectors that are connected to the heavy bus. That way I can connect any part of any rail to the bus. Now you can see a pair of spare connections here, and those are going to be used for powering the frog when I add frog juicers to the whole mix. Right now the frogs are not connected to power, but at some point I'm going to connect the frogs to those two additional lugs through the yellow wire here on the bottom through a circuit called a frog juicer.
So what is a frog juicer? Peel or what?
Yeah, I'm reminded of a Saturday Night Live skit where they were talking about frog in a blender. No, this is an actual circuit that will alternate the power going to the frog between the outside rail and the inside rail, depending on which way the switch is thrown. And if you're using DCC, that can all be done automatically. You don't have to have any kind of manual switch. It can just be a circuit called a frog juicer. And so that's why I've added these two spare lugs that have nothing connected to them yet, and or actually spare connections, and then there will be two lugs plugged in here that will go to the frog juicer.
Oh.
And then the other end connects to that yellow wire.
I see.
And so once the frog juicers are hooked up, every single rail here will have a direct connection to power.
Well, that's good.
So there won't be, nothing will be powered through a rail joint, nothing will be powered through a closing gap. Everything will be connected directly to power through a soldered connection and a wire. Now over here, this is where that fourth switch is going to go. This is the mine. And up until now, there's just been these two tracks that go up to the mine and end, and that makes switching cars out or doing anything here at the mine virtually, literally impossible.
Right.
And so by adding a switch connecting the two rails this way, now I'll be able to switch out gondolas and actually do switching here at the mine. This was my intent all along, so that we could do actual operations here at the mine, but I just had it sort of roughed in with two tracks coming back here.
Yes.
And now the absolute funnest part, testing it.
Oh boy.
So we wait for it to cool off a bit out here, put power to everything, and start running some trains around.
And keep our fingers crossed.
But the switches throw just fine. Everything's got power going to it, except the frogs, which still need to have their frog juicers. But look at this. Smooth, nice operation through here. We were losing power and having all kinds of glitches on the old switches, which is why they are now over here on the take it apart track. And everything's back to working 100%.
Looks good. Well, it's sure fun watching this grow and change.
Slow but sure.
Oh, we've had our ups and downs with it, literally.
Torn the whole thing apart and started over, but it's working really well. It's growing, and it's just fun to come out here and run trains.
Exactly.
If you're not a subscriber to the channel, well, here comes your blue opportunity. Boing. Right there, the blue button.
Right there.
Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here on Sunday.
Right.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.